Amber, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you on the Cannabis Creative Blog. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. And thank you so much for having me today. It's just such an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So to start out with, tell me your name, your position, and the company you work for.
Yes, so my name is Amber Saba. I am the CEO of GreenScreens. And GreenScreens is a cannabis technology company. And what we've done is we've set out to really deliver the industry's first unified information platform.
Okay, expand on that a little bit for me. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so a lot of our products are designed around connecting people. And in cannabis, what we have found and what we've learned in our years of experience is that there's so many different components that are siloed in the cannabis industry. And they really haven't been afforded tools that are standard or common to traditional retail operations. And so what we're trying to do is unify those different components and really surface information and data so that it's making their daily operations, their daily tasks a lot more simple.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. It's interesting when you look at an industry like cannabis and all of these problems that have been solved in other industries that we now have to figure out how to solve.
That's exactly right. And, part of how we talk about ourselves is that, we just don't think that's right. The cannabis industry isn't afforded these tools and these platforms because they're cannabis. And GreenScreens is really set out as part of our culture is that we don't think that's right. And that's why we're here. That's why we're drawn to this industry and we want to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what brought you to starting your own company? Because that's not an easy decision.
Yeah, so I actually am not one of the original co-founders of GreenScreens, but I have been a very, very close friend with one of the co-founders who is our CPO today. And he actually brought my husband and I into an investor meeting to explain what they were doing, where they were going. And it was really just an opportunity for us to initially invest in the company. And after that meeting of learning about GreenScreens and really the vision of what these group of co-founders wanted to do, I just knew I needed to be a part of it. So I am an investor, but I am also one that was just pulled into this industry and GreenScreens because of what they were working on and working towards.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So when did you join?
I joined back in 2019. I originally came on as the vice president. So I did a lot of vice president type of tasks at that time, and then really evolved into a COO role. And at that time, we were really focusing on our culture and defining who we were and where we were going to be going as an organization. I kind of describe it as laying that key foundation for the organization so that our pillars of what our core values can stand strong. And that's really what we lean on and what we abide by. And after that, that was at a point when our CEO, who was currently in his role, really became more fractional. There was a lot of other projects and things that were going on. And I stepped up into the CEO role to really manage and run that day to day, as well as our investor relationships, as that's a really key factor when you're raising money.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is something that I hear a lot about from people running businesses in the cannabis space, the investor portion of it, the challenge of raising that money.
Yes. It's exhilarating and it's so exciting and rewarding, but absolutely a challenge. So you have to be up for it.
Yeah, definitely. So when was GreenScreens founded initially?
It was initially founded in 2017 by the three co-founders.
Gotcha. So tell me about your personal journey with cannabis. What brought you to the industry? Do you use cannabis? Tell me about it.
Yeah, great questions. So really just in that initial meeting of understanding GreenScreens business model, that's really what drew me to it. It was just this passion that was inherent in this industry. And you literally could feel this passion. And I just knew that I needed to be a part of that passion. I'm not a cannabis user myself personally, but I've always been an advocate for the power of this plant. I really have spent some time learning and understanding how cannabis has changed the quality of a lot of people's lives. Our veterans, for instance, just the PTSD that they experience. And that's something that, not many people will understand. children who suffer with seizures, multiple seizures a day, and how it's knocking that down to maybe a seizure or two a month. And cancer patients, we've all known that chemotherapy, we've seen it in movies, we've seen it in our families and our friends, and how challenging that is, and how cannabis has really curbed how damaging that poison is to their bodies. So that's really where my passion comes from. I'm a really empathetic person, in addition. So I just don't feel, just because I am not a user of cannabis, I see the power of how it's impacting others' lives in such a positive way. And it's just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't need to be a user to appreciate that.
Exactly.
I'd like to dig into that a little bit more, though. I know a lot of people are raised with a lot of misconceptions around cannabis. So when, I'm assuming since you were raised in America as I was, you were fed a lot of those too. When did you start to unpack that and start to realize what this plant could do?
Yeah, so actually my sister is 7 years older than me. So she was a little bit like a mother figure when I was growing up, but she had suffered with anxiety and just really trying to manage her emotions and kind of the things that life was throwing at her as a young adult. And she was a user of cannabis. And I really I was able to see firsthand how that just made her days so much less crushing, right? Like she just had something that made her feel less frustrated, less anxious, and it just was powerful. And I learned from a really young age not to be judgmental of it. Like, yes, at the time it might not have been a legal product to have in your household or to be consuming, but really just seeing the difference that it made, and her quality of life improving, and how she was able to function. So that's really where my understanding of the plant started. And I'm thankful for it, just because I personally I've tried it, of course. I've tried multiple different ways of consuming. I also have learned that I am one of those lucky people who my metabolism lets it stay in my system a lot longer than a lot of other people. So I don't tend to appreciate the high or the feeling lasting as long as it typically does for me. But to each his own, and I am just not a judgmental person. So I just want everyone to feel happy and just in a good space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a key part or a key message in the industry right now is cannabis doesn't work for everybody. And that's super important to acknowledge. We are all unique and it can do incredible things, but sometimes it doesn't.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your background that brought you to being the CEO of GreenScreens.
Yes. So my background is actually in oil and gas. So I started in oil and gas straight out of college, and I had the opportunity to work at an exploration and production company. So that's where they're actually drilling into the ground and taking oil out of the ground. So I learned a lot of the accounting functions at that time. And it was a small company. So I had this amazing opportunity to work really closely with the CEO of that oil and gas company. So I learned so much from him, and I absorbed so many different facets of that industry just by having the opportunity to be that close to him. So I spent a number of years with him, and then I actually had the opportunity to move over into what's midstream. So I was buying and selling crude oil, and there was an opportunity for a organization out of Houston, Texas. They started a Colorado branch in downtown Denver. And I had one partner where our task was to go build out this Colorado branch of clientele. And over the course of our first year and a half, we actually earned quite a lot of business, but significantly, we brought on the largest producer by volume in the Bakken Play. So that's Montana, North Dakota, that area. So we were eventually moving hundreds of thousands of barrels per day. And that was amazing. But what we were realizing is, wow, we have all of these clients and things are working. But what we really need to slow down and focus on is our SOPs. We need to develop tools and really track this production and the schedules. Oil and gas was very much like cannabis today. There are not these fancy tools it's very much a spreadsheet, and you're just really entering that data in yourself. It's very simple tools that you're using to track very large amounts of information and data. So I was starting to define all of those standard practices. But what was most critical in that role was the relationships. I am a relationship person, and bringing on those clients, I knew and understood that it wasn't just about the monetary value that we were bringing to these producers, or how much money we were saving them, or how many headaches we saved them. It all came down to the relationship that I was growing with each of those producers and their teams. So it was a really valuable learning experience, and we were very successful in it. But I was just honed in on how I was making others feel. And it was really that connection of feeling and that relationship that kept those producers wanting to work with us. It was just really powerful. But at the time I met GreenScreens, I was in that investor meeting, and I just knew that this is exactly what the cannabis industry needed. It needed people that genuinely cared. It needed people who wanted to develop those relationships and those tight-knit bonds, so that we could lift, high tides lift all boats. And I left my career in oil and gas, and, I really never looked back.
So coming from a field like oil and gas that has a pretty big impact on the environment, that's something the cannabis industry is really trying to deal with right now, is how do we mitigate that impact on the environment and not let it grow to the same levels? So how does sustainability factor into what GreenScreens is doing?
It's not necessarily, it's more so that we have to be more comfortable with technology, right? I think as human beings, we're designed to be curious about things that we don't know about. And technology always tends to be something that is a little bit scary. You look back at when Apple was being developed, when the first computer was being developed, and people just were like, oh, what is this? This is not for us. This is never going to take off. No one's ever going to use this, right? And then look at us today, but again, as humans, we're just designed to be curious about those things that we're not familiar with. So my opinion on the sustainability is that there are companies from a technological perspective that can help with these issues that are going to be reoccurring. But we as a group of cannabis advocates really need to be comfortable with that and welcoming and inviting. And cannabis industry is really the most of all others welcoming and inviting to solutions and people who want to try to solve these issues that we're facing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you bring up a great point. Technology can really help us further these goals, but it can be hard to get comfortable with new levels of technology. It's a learning curve.
Absolutely.
So now that you've been in the industry for a few years, what are you most excited to see right now?
I have to say, I am most excited about the product that GreenScreens has actually just recently launched. It's in a beta testing phase with one of our legacy customers here in Colorado. And again, we talked about how cannabis retailers really are not afforded those tools and platforms so that they can run their day-to-day operations with ease and peace of mind. And again, it comes down to the fact that it's because they're cannabis, and we don't think that's right. So we really launched this product that is surfacing real-time information on a tablet that is meant to be carried around or be up on a manager's desk. It is not something that is another tab on your computer screen. It is not a report that you have to go deep dive into and try to understand what that data is trying to tell you. I compare this product really as the dashboard in your car. So you have messages that are alerting you when you need gas or when you need to change your oil. But you also have those accelerated messages on your dashboard that say, hey, something's wrong with our engine and we need attention right now. That's what this tool is designed to give these retailers, to have insight and visibility into what is going on with their staff, with their transactions, with their inventory, and really giving them that real-time insight into when do you need to take action? When does something need your attention? And it's really been in the cannabis space, I think, a really reactive way of operating rather than proactive. And it has to be unbelievably frustrating for these retail operators. So what we're trying to give them the ability to do is a forward-looking motion, right? Let's look ahead. Let's have the runway to plan. Let's restock the inventory that actually moves and has an impact on our top line revenue. Let's see what our staff is doing, and let's tap into those skill sets of our staff. You know, maybe Josie is really great at selling concentrates. So let's have Josie do a lunch and learn so that the other staff members can understand what it is that she's saying to do a great job of selling that product. Mm-hmm. So there's so many different ways to use this tool, but it really comes down to just giving them that insight and visibility into it.
It's not something that I, as a writer, I've ever considered, but I think you make a really good comparison to the car dashboard. It's a really easy way to understand what this piece of complex technology can do for a business.
That's amazing to hear, because it is really challenging. When something is your baby and you're developing these tools, it can be challenging to try to relate it to something that is every day. And so that's really great to hear that it's hitting home and it's tying the message together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing when you say, oh, it provides insights and data. It's another thing when you say, consider it like your check engine light, like your tire pressure light, all these different little parts of your business that may need attention that otherwise, who's circling their car looking at their tires every week? Nobody.
Exactly right.
So on the opposite end of the spectrum, what is something that you're seeing in this industry that you are not a fan of?
The criminalization of cannabis. I mean, that's truly something that has to end. It has to stop. And, we are very fortunate to have organizations like the Last Prisoner Project, who they've dedicated themselves. I mean, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about the dedication and the hard work of these passionate people who have set out to change people being incarcerated for something that is legal today. Mm-hmm. It's just it's something that we really do as an entire industry, whether we're a dispensary, whether we're a brand, whether we're technology. We really all need to come together to rally to end this. It's not necessary.
It's not, and it's probably the greatest travesty in our industry that you can have so many people making a profit off of this while other people, particularly Black people, sit in prison because of it.
Absolutely. And we have our champions like Al Harrington, Viola Brands, and just setting out to specifically hone his efforts and his resources on participating and ending this. It's those types of groups and the Last Prisoner Project that are making the biggest impact, and they just need all of our support. And the ways that we can do that at GreenScreens and how we have done that with Last Prisoner Project, they have a Roll It Up for Justice program, and we utilize our connections and our relationships with our retailers to communicate that information and say, this is something that this industry needs your support in. Would you implement the Roll It Up for Justice program that supports these efforts of freeing 40,000 people who are still sitting in prison?
Mm-hmm. So that kind of leads me into my next question, which is about social equity, because that's something we hear a lot about in this industry. So your organization works a lot with Last Prisoner Project?
I would say that, we do everything that we can in our power to support them with our resources. But I mean, we really do support everything that they're working on.
That's awesome. So you help them with event promotion, connections in the industry, kind of the technology side of things.
Yeah, we've even done things a little creative on our end too, to really try to spread the word on their behalf. We have a zone on our screens inside the dispensaries where you can run content or messaging or promotions. And what we've done is we've partnered to actually display Last Prisoner Project content or Viola Brands content on those specific zones. So anyone who's entering that dispensary sees that messaging and branding, and then the staff is also the other side of it, where they're consistently seeing that messaging. So it's really just spreading the word through putting it in front of the eyes of the viewer.
Yeah, absolutely. Awareness is the start to all of it, isn't it?
Right.
So you touched on a bit about your core pillars, your core values. Tell me about how diversity and inclusion factors into those.
Yes, I love our culture at GreenScreens. It is something that we spend a significant amount of time on. And really that's where, once I became the COO, that is really where I put a lot of my heart and soul and passion into defining what our culture was going to be. So that's who we are, what we do, where we're going, and our core values. So we define that, and it's really been the key component of every decision that we make at GreenScreens leans and relies on our culture and our core values. And it's especially present when we're hiring people to join our team. So we focus on hiring individuals who are passionate. I know I've used that word quite a bit, but creative, high performing employees, and having diverse backgrounds. My role as the CEO now is to hire individuals and surround myself with people who are smarter than me. I don't want to hire people because they think like me or come from similar backgrounds as me. So that's one way that we really try to incorporate that diversity. If you look at our team, we're a very diverse group of people with all different backgrounds, different skill sets, different walks of life. And additionally, we incorporate diversity and inclusion in our client offerings. We just understand the challenges of the cannabis retail space. It's different from state to state. It's different from grow to grow, different from operation to operation, and no two are alike. So what we do is we really have a tailored approach and tailored practices to meet the unique needs of each of our clients. So we are an advocate for the standard practices that MSOs are striving to have. We want to serve and partner with the MSOs, but we are 100% an advocate for the social equity dispensaries and the smaller shops that don't want to expand and be that MSO. We want the dispensary for the social equity group. We want their dreams and successes to come true. We want that to come to fruition. We want them to prosper just like an MSO or any other operation. And we want them to have the same level of service, no matter the size.
Something you just said that I really like is hiring people who don't think like you, who don't come from the same background as you, because I think that's really the way you diversify your pool of ideas that your business can use.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Keeps it from becoming stale or repetitive because everybody brings something to the table. Yes.
It can be interesting too, because, you may think that you have a great idea and, everybody's going to rally around this amazing idea that you have. But what's really amazing about it is that others give you a new perspective or a different view. And it's really remarkable how quickly you can move and how fast you can grow when you're not just in this tunnel vision space of thinking that your ideas are amazing all the time. I may not view something from a different perspective that one of my teammates brings up to me, and it's very eye-opening, and it really does enable our team to just move so fast.
Yeah, absolutely. When you don't have a homogenous team, you're able to identify those weak spots and ideas and then fix them and make them stronger.
Absolutely. Yes.
Definitely. The cannabis space is not without its challenges though. So what is something that you or the organization has overcome recently?
I would say one of the things that's been really challenging for GreenScreens is really just coming down to expressing how we are different. The company started as an integrated menu board provider. And what I mean by that is we started as tying into the point of sale for the dispensary. And then we were able to sort and clean up that data and push it to the screens so that it was always live in inventory, always displaying real-time information for those consumers. But there's other companies that do exactly that. They create menu boards and they put them up into dispensaries. But the way that we've treated our customers and approached our customers with this dispensary first mentality of whatever GreenScreens does and however we service this dispensary, it's going to be with the dispensary's best interest in mind and in heart, not GreenScreens. So that's been a little bit challenging to communicate that effectively so that people understand how our model is so very different. You know, we want to partner with our dispensaries and understand intimately what their problems are. We don't want to become an ad-based company where the advertising dollars are feeding the machine and we don't care how it impacts the dispensary. That is the exact opposite of who GreenScreens is. And that's really what has earned us the position to have these relationships, have this intimate role in the life of these operators, so that we could go build new tools like the one that we're beta testing right now. Had we not had that relationship, we would never have known what their pain points were or how we could make their day-to-day operations easier, better, more efficient, sustainable, giving them SOPs that they don't have. So I would really say that that's the point of trying to express how we're different.
Gotcha. Yeah, it can be challenging in the cannabis space. There's a lot of restrictions on what you can and can't say, where you can and can't say it, and reaching your customers can be a challenge.
Absolutely. You know, I always use this analogy too, that dispensaries are really designed to keep everyone out except for the consumer and the staff. And so that becomes even more of a challenge as a vendor or a company that knows that you can help them, knows that you can solve so many of their problems and make them more profitable, more efficient. But it's challenging in cannabis to get in front of them. Rightfully so. I mean, they're bombarded with so many vendors all the time. I mean, I can only imagine what it feels like for them on a daily basis.
Fair enough. Yeah. So when you're working with your customers, these dispensaries, other cannabis businesses, you have a dispensary first model, but what do you want them to take away from working with you?
That all comes down to those relationships. We really strive to ensure that our customers see that we are genuinely passionate about not only this industry, but about their particular success in this industry. So we don't approach them as strictly business or you know, traditionally how you might think of a vendor in another industry. We are intent on developing these relationships, and it is so important to us to understand that every single person that approaches GreenScreens or that GreenScreens approaches has unique needs. And we want to give them that experience to let them know we're here to support you. We're not here to take advantage of you. We want to have a relationship with you to help. We want to lift all boats in this industry. And the way that we do that is by building relationships. And we invest in that at GreenScreens. We've built out an entire customer success department at GreenScreens. So there are people, live people, dedicated to connecting with the end consumer, the end client. Our customer success team, I am just so proud of them. They have it to the point that they're on a texting basis with a lot of their customers.
Really?
And I see these messages come through all the time. You know, they'll screenshot it and share it with me because they're so proud of the relationships that they've built. But they literally have said in these text messages that, you know, we love GreenScreens and like, we love you. They use this word love. And it's just really remarkable for someone like me to come from oil and gas, where that is just very, very unacceptable. That's very taboo. That is not how we build relationships, by using the word love. And coming to a space in cannabis where it's just so freely used, but it's earned. And that is what is really powerful about GreenScreens, especially with our customer success group. I cannot say enough about them.
Cannabis is all about love.
That's right.
So that leads me to my next question of something you're really proud of in GreenScreens.
That is 100% my team. The team that I am surrounded by is absolutely the number one thing that I am so proud of. I don't get to talk about all of them all the time, but I am surrounded by some of the most brilliant, creative, hardworking, and dedicated people that I have ever had the opportunity to work with. And if anybody really wanted to know what the soul of GreenScreens is, it lives in the minds and the hearts of every single team member that I work with.
That's powerful to have such a supportive team around you. And I'm sure it's powerful for them too, to be able to come into this space and share something they're so passionate about.
Absolutely. And I really do dedicate that. It's a testament to our culture, spending that time to slow down when we were very small and before we started hiring, is to really define what we're doing, where we're going, and what those core values are, because that's the decision maker, right? That's how we've been able to attract these amazing individuals who sacrifice on a daily basis to work at a startup, and they work way too many hours, and you know, they stretch themselves so thin, but it's a testament to culture.
It is. And culture is really foundational to a business's success. And it's not something that you can really go back in and put in retroactively. It has to be instilled from the ground up.
Absolutely. And talked about continuously and constantly. And I think everyone would say that I'm the culture queen, because I bring it up, I mean, really on a daily basis in everything that we do. So, but it's important and it works.
Yeah. So moving forward, the cannabis industry, I mean, it's even just this past year has seen incredible leaps and bounds forward. So what are you looking forward to in the future?
I'm just really looking forward to, you know, we talked about how technology is very taboo, and the TVs and, you know, computers that came out, even liquor back in the day, it just seems so taboo, and people are just unfamiliar with it. So I'm really looking forward to regulations lessening and the progressive movement of acceptance towards cannabis. I really do view this as something that can change really the world. So seeing how this is going to impact individuals as they become more comfortable with it and as it's more widely accepted, that's really where I'm just so looking forward to it. At the same time, I'm really hopeful that the culture of the cannabis industry, I really truly hope that it stays true, and that it doesn't turn into these other industries where there's so much money and there's so much, you know, structure to it, that it takes over and changes and shifts it from what it truly has always been.
Yeah, definitely. I was at a cannabis event last night, and one of the speakers said, in cannabis, we don't want to see one billionaire. We want to see 1,000 millionaires.
Exactly. That's exactly right. 100%. And I think, you know, as long as we all who are in this space and live it and breathe it every day can hold true and continue sharing that message, that's the way that we're going to be able to get it done.
Yeah. And it has to be the people in the industry, because I think you see a pretty serious schism in the people who are in it for the quick money, the people who want to come to cannabis, they want to hit the green rush, make $1 million and leave, and the people who are passionate about this plant.
Exactly. Yes.
Definitely. So this has been phenomenal, and I so appreciate you sharing some time with me. I have one more question, and then anything else you would like to add at the end. But what is your favorite fun fact about cannabis?
Oh yes, I love this one. So while I have had to put a lot of time and effort into researching and reading and understanding so that I can prepare not only myself, but you know, the rest of the team and my C-suite group of people that work side by side with me for these investor conversations, and you know, how can we wow them? How can we communicate how big this industry is? And one of the things that I came across that just blew me away was that in markets, for example, I'm in Colorado, in mature markets like Colorado, dispensaries outnumber McDonald's and Starbucks combined. And I think that is combined. And I think that is absolutely so fascinating that it really puts it into perspective, because when you're driving around, you see a Starbucks and a McDonald's, I mean, almost on the opposite side of the street everywhere. So to have that perspective of understanding how truly big this industry is going to be and where it's going, it really does, it sets the tone for an investor to hear that. You know, this is a
Yeah.
big opportunity.
I had no idea. That is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not everywhere. It's not every state, but truly, you know, California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, we're very mature markets here. So we've had time to, you know, establish these dispensaries, and they've been running and operating for quite some time. And it's truly fascinating.
What's really interesting to me about that is these mature markets are still less than 10 years old. They're not even
That's
that
right.
old.
That's right. And that's really the testament, and you know why GreenScreens is here, is that they're not that old, but they really need unique companies to be built and started to serve their unique needs. Not every tool or piece of software is ready to jump into working with cannabis because it's not federally legal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the point of sale companies and you know, Flow Hub has been started here in Colorado as well. Those organizations were started because cannabis needed it. So I think that there's really going to be a significant presence of more and more technology companies popping up because cannabis has unique needs.
It does. And cannabis doesn't just need dispensaries or farmers. Cannabis needs every single part of an industry, and they need people who are passionate about cannabis and have this outside knowledge.
Absolutely. That's why we're here.
Yeah, definitely. This has been wonderful. Anything else you want to add today?
Just thank you so much, Jessica. This was such a pleasure to finally see you virtually and have the opportunity to talk about GreenScreens. I just truly appreciate it. It's been such a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure too. I love learning about what you guys are doing.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.